If you wake up in the morning and you immediately go to the news, you immediately go to social media, you immediately go to your emails, you're just allowing the cacophonous factors that prevail within the world today to eat your brain. We need a certain kind of nervous system to be able to endure these times, much less to be able to transform them.
Welcome to Living in the Miracle Zone. This is the place to be if you want to live in the flow of synchronicities and miracles in your everyday life. I'm your host, Marci Shimoff. I'm a #1 New York Times bestselling author, a teacher in The Secret, and the creator of the worldwide program, Your Year of Miracles. And I have spent my life studying happiness and miracles. And in this podcast, we bring to you extraordinary stories that will inspire you and groundbreaking miracle tools that will show you how you can live your most miraculous life. And it's my heartfelt intention that we have a fabulous time together. So welcome to the Miracle Zone. And today I am joined by the one and only Marianne Williamson. Welcome, Marianne. I'm so thrilled to have you here.
Well, I'm always thrilled to talk to you. So thank you for having me.
For those maybe two people out there that haven't heard of you, let me say a little bit about your background, and then I'll tell people a little bit about my own experience with you. So for more than 40 years, Marianne has been a leader of spiritually progressive circles. She's the author of 16 books. 4 of them have been #1 New York Times bestsellers. There's a quote from her mega bestseller, A Return to Love, that I am sure you've heard of. It's, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure." And I love that quote. And also, your other bestsellers have included A Woman's Worth. I devoured that the minute it came out back in the 90s. The Law of Divine Compensation, Tears to Triumph, and The Gift of Change. And Marianne, you have taught online programs. You have spoken to millions of people about the universal spiritual principles that are at the heart of miracle-minded thinking. And your newest book is The Mystic Jesus, The Mind of Love. And we're here to talk about that today. But first, I just want to share a little bit about my own experience with Marianne. Marianne has been a very dear friend, colleague, sister for many years. Back in the 90s, I went with Marianne on a trip to Bali, and something happened very significant on that trip. I raised my hand in this group that we were talking about, and I said, "I want to find my soulmate." And I said it very apologetically, like there was something wrong with wanting that. And Marianne said, "There is nothing wrong with wanting that. In fact, we are going to do a prayer together here for calling in your soulmate." And she led this most magnificent prayer, which she always does. And we're going to get to have a prayer with you later on today. And fabulous prayer. I left the trip. 3 weeks later, I met my husband, Sergio. That was 25 years ago. And Marianne, you have been so significant in my life. All through those years, you've guided me and coached me in my relationships. You've also really opened me up to bigger ways of thinking about the world. And I am so grateful for your friendship and you are probably the most brilliant person I've gotten to ever be with and talk with. You're brilliant, and you care so deeply. And I just adore you for all of that.
Well, thank you. The admiration and affection are mutual, I assure you. So thank you for the stalwart friendship that you have shown to me. And I do remember that. I think it was very early in the trip, like maybe our first meeting, and you and I didn't know each other yet. Glad it worked out. I've always liked him. I told you that. I've always been on Team Sergio. Even when you weren't on Team Sergio, I was on Team Sergio.
That is so true. And you've really helped me through those difficult times. And Team Sergio Sergio and I are doing great. We just celebrated 25, so we're doing great. I always love to start this with asking people, how did they come to live a miraculous life? I know that your life in the earlier years did not feel quite as miraculous, or you weren't in that in that mindset, in that mode. So maybe tell us your journey on that.
I think my childhood was one in which I appreciated the miraculous. I had no exposure to the real problems of the world when I was growing up. I felt safe and I felt loved. Now, in adolescence, I went through what everybody goes through. But in my 20s, and in your 20s are hard. I keep saying to people, the 20s are hard. They're not a mental illness, as some people would have you believe today, but they're hard. And my growing up in that sense was very garden variety. If there's anything unique, it's that there wasn't anything unique. I went through, I now realize, in my 20s, what everybody goes through, trying to figure out who you are when your innocence, as it were, bumps up against some very harsh realities of the world. I was always interested, from even when I was a teenager, interested in comparative religion, and I would read everything, Eastern and Western. I would read the I Ching. I would read about astrology, but I would also read serious comparative religion, St. Augustine, Hegel. I mean, I was always interested in philosophy and religion, but I found it very hard to actually apply any of those things to my life in ways that had any practical application. And so whether it was my relationships with men or my trying to build a career or my being in school, it was just one sort of mess after another. But then when I was in my mid-20s, I saw the Course in Miracles. Now, I don't think any book or teaching or teacher has a monopoly on the truth. It's not that the Course in Miracles told me things I didn't already know. As a matter of fact, there's a book by Jane Roberts called The Nature of Personal Reality. That book so blew my mind. So I had already read there what now seems like such mainstream understanding, but at that time it was not, that your thoughts create your reality. But even reading that in her book, although that helped me understand the Course in Miracles, it wasn't until the Course that I experienced guidance for how to do that. Because the Course in Miracles has a workbook, which is 365 lessons. So every day of the year, it's one thing to read about how exercise will help you. And to believe that. It's another thing to hire a trainer who really knows what to do at the gym. So A Course in Miracles became for me, and Jesus became for me, the Holy Spirit, whatever language you use for some of this, an internal guidance. Like in the workbook of the Course in Miracles, it says that the first half of the year is the dismantling of a thought system based on fear. And then the second half of the year is a thought system, constructing a thought system based on love. It's not 5 easy steps. This is not a how-to. This is about pulling a thought system that has been with us, not just in our own lifetime, but for millennia, out by the roots, a thought system by which all of us are trained to see each other as separate from us, to think in terms of scarcity, attack, defense, fear. That stuff feels natural to us. So it's not easy to say, oh, okay, I won't be that way anymore. And then even when you are finished with that year, it's like physical exercise. You never get to stop. It's a constant training of our attitudinal muscles. So that's when I began to recognize what was necessary and to begin the journey of doing it. Listen, it's not like I'm an enlightened master today, but once your feet are firmly on the path, then you at least know what questions to ask. You know what choices are yours to make. You know what you're responsible for. You know how to get it right, whether or not you choose to get it right. And you know how to atone and make amends when you get it wrong and get back on the spiritual wagon.
For those people that aren't familiar with what A Course in Miracles is, maybe you could just share just a very brief thing about what it is.
A Course in Miracles is a set of books, 3 books. And it has been called a self-study program of spiritual psychotherapy. The Course in Miracles says that the real spiritual path and psychotherapy are the same thing. It's a healing of the mind, a transformation of the way we think. The Course itself calls it a psychological mind training. No doctrine, no dogma, no religion. It's a self-study psychological training in forgiveness, basically, in living a more loving, forgiving, conscious life, in which we are challenged. It's not that we challenge, it's that life challenges us in any given moment to show up more powerfully in a way that promotes the good, the true, the beautiful, and the holy. And yet, every situation also tempts us to fall back into default positions of fear and limitation, which the Course in Miracles calls the ego mind. It's a recognition that no thought is neutral. And I think that that's very important for the lives we're living right now, not just individually, but on the planet. There's no such thing as being neutral. Get over it, everybody. You are either contributing to the upliftment of what is going on, or you are actually complicit in energy that's moving down. And that's a very sobering realization, because I think especially for the spiritual crowd, there's been a sense we've justified some complacency with this kind of faux spiritual thing, like we don't go where it's toxic. And by our not going where it's toxic, toxicity only magnifies. So this is a very serious moment to take all this, to take ourselves seriously, and to take our journey seriously, and to take our world very seriously.
Out of all of the spiritual principles that are, at the heart of miracle-minded thinking, what do you think are the most important for us to really embrace and practice?
That the universe is intentional. That everything that happens in our lives, every circumstance, and every circumstance really is a relationship, every circumstance represents a lesson that is perfect for us at that moment. Every moment, we are making a choice. We are making it consciously, or we are making it unconsciously. Is my heart going to be open, or is my heart going to be closed? If my heart is open, I am activating the matrix of miracles by which one synapse leads to another synapse, which connects to another person, which then makes us exponentially grow, in which the universe knows exactly what it's doing, and paths of happiness and possibility emerge for all living things. However, in any moment that we close our hearts, any judgment, any withhold of possibility, any attack, any defense, we are deflecting the miracle. But as I said before, you're not just being neutral. You are either extending love or projecting fear. So the Course in Miracles says you achieve so little because you have undisciplined minds. And it says that all thought creates form on some level. So this is a realization that your life matters, not just to you, but every single thought we think either takes things up or takes things down in ways that do not just affect us, but affect the entire world.
That's the great challenge, is how do we bring that to what we see? And I know that, I'm curious why the mystic Jesus now. I want to talk about the mystic Jesus and how we bring what you've just said into how we make this happen right now in our world and in our lives.
Well, there are two things when we talk about, how do we do it? There are two things I want to mention even before we focus on where Jesus fits in. The two words I want to bring forth is the morning and willingness. Every religious or spiritual path I've ever read about focuses on some level on the power of the morning. And I think that's very important in our world today, Marci. If you wake up in the morning and you immediately go to the news, you immediately go to social media, you immediately go to your emails, you're just allowing the cacophonous factors that prevail within the world today to eat your brain. We need a certain kind of nervous system to be able to endure these times, much less to be able to transform them. So whatever your practice is, In the Course in Miracles, it says 5 minutes spent with the Holy Spirit in the morning is enough to guarantee he will be in charge of your thought forms throughout the day. So whatever your practice is, TM, Course in Miracles, whatever it is, the morning. That's number one. Number two, there's a line in the Course where it says you are not expected to be perfect, but you're expected to be honest. Your good intentions are not enough, but your willingness is everything. So you had a negative thought. So you had a judgmental thought. So you had an attack thought. So you had a defensive thought. That's okay. Just be honest and be willing to change the thinking. That's where Jesus comes in, because Jesus is one name for an internal guidance system that lives within all of us. It's what the Course calls a gentle bridge of perception. In that sense, he is an evolutionary elder brother. He has already actualized the divine potential that lives within all of us. He says in the Course, I don't have anything you don't have. I don't have anything else. I am in a state that is only potential in you. His mind has been completely purified of all non-loving thought. Having completely actualized loving, i.e. divine consciousness, he has been given by God the authorization, should you and I request it. Now, if we don't request it, it would be a violation of our free will. But should you request it, you can say, in this moment, I know that love would produce a miracle. However, the trigger is too big, the wound is too deep, the betrayal was too massive. I can't do it. I need help. But I am willing. I am willing to forgive these people. I'm willing to understand that only love is real. I am willing to know that we are all love and that sometimes we all get confused, and so we don't know how to express our love and get our needs met, and other people make mistakes, and I've made mistakes too. I'm willing to get all that. I get it intellectually that my life would completely open up, but it's too big for me in this moment. But I am willing. And the Course in Miracles says the Holy Spirit responds fully to your slightest invitation. So Jesus is the Course in Miracles says, in any language, that word reminds the mind. You know, it's an interesting word, to be reminded. Reminded. Or like the word recognize, to recognize, to look at it a different way. Think about this differently. He is a portal that actually what the Course in Miracles says about the miracle is that it is a divine intercession from a thought system beyond our own. You know, in the Vatican, that famous picture, the hand of God and the hand of man, the Course in Miracles says you can't get totally there yourself, but you can come close enough that God will lift you and take you the entire way. And Jesus is a way to get just close enough. It doesn't take you beyond all ego thinking, except in the instant. But it's to say, I get how important this is. I get that this is a choice that will determine the rest of my life. I get that this is something that affects the entire world. But I'm stuck. We're all stuck. We have habit patterns. You know, it's just like going, once again, the image of going to the gym. You know, you have to work those muscles. I think of him as this kind of like, think of yourself in the gym and he's your trainer, except that your attitudinal muscles. And just like when you go to the gym, you're doing repeated, accumulated repetitions of anti-gravity, right? So, if I go like that, it's one thing. If I don't go like that, if I don't lift weights, what's going to happen? Physical gravity is going to bring me down and I'm going to have all kinds of stuff there, okay? Same with emotional and psychological gravity. After a certain age, if you don't work those muscles holding them up, they're headed down. Same with your mind. If you don't work on positivity at a time like this, cynicism will overtake you. Negativity will overtake you. Bitterness will overtake you. And you will become, your muscles will constrict. And you'll live a kind of pathetic life. You want that because you can't. This is all about cause and effect. It's not subjective, it's objective. So Jesus is one way. The Course in Miracles says he's not the only, but he is one way to say, I want to have a guide. He says in the Course, there's this beautiful part where he says, when you are in a place where you are confused and you don't know how to move forward, reach out for my hand as would a child for an elder brother. And I will take you across those rocks. And then he says, it's an amazing line. He says, I assure you, this is no idle fantasy. And you know what? It's also like physical exercise. It's like AA. It's like anything else. If you do it it works. If you don't do it, it doesn't work. And we all know in our lives, it's not, he says in the Course, my way is not difficult, but it's different. And that's the thing, Marci. Truth is simple, but life is complicated. Truth is easy enough to understand the principles. It's living all this that's hard. So it's like you can say, all right, you just need to be loving, you need to be forgiving, you need to see, to extend your perception beyond what somebody did or said, to remember the truth of their innocence, and that will free you from the effects of their mistakes. Okay, I get it. We've all read the same books. We've all listened to the same tapes. The issue is when you're actually in that place. So what's difficult is not applying it. What's difficult is getting over our resistance to applying it. That's how big the ego is, because the ego, to the fear-based mind, its peak experience is our pain and suffering. So the Course in Miracles says you can have a grievance or you can have a miracle. You can't have both. And yet I ask myself, why am I holding on to this grievance? And then that's where that line, often attributed to Rumi, often attributed to Dr. Phil, but it's from the Course in Miracles. Do you prefer to be right or to be happy? And you really begin to understand there's a force within us that really doesn't want to go for the happiness. It wants to go for the revenge more than it wants to go for the happiness.
So
this stuff's deep.
Our resistance is strong. I mean, the ego, it's at stake, So what do we do in the face of seeing, I don't want to let go of this? Is that where you're saying Jesus comes in to help? A willingness?
That willingness is the issue. He says your good intentions are not enough. Your willingness is everything. I'll tell you one that I think you'll appreciate happened for me the other day. This one person that forgiving has not been easy for me. I was scrolling the other day and I had just been thinking about that situation, and up comes a video of Wayne Dyer with Nick, what's Nick's last name? The tapping guy?
Nick Ortner.
Yeah. It's Nick Ortner and Wayne Dyer. Nick putting Wayne through this forgiveness thing. I'm willing to forgive. And this is what I don't want to, but I'm going to. I don't want to, but I'm going to. I thought, wow, that's perfect. It is willingness. And it's a process. And you consider what are going to be the results in my life if I do, and what are going to be the results in my life if I don't. And I've had enough situations in my life where I did not, in that tremendous examples, both personally and professionally, where if I had only taken a moment to think, if I had only taken a moment to pray, if I had only been willing to not bring the past baggage into that moment, the things that could have and would have unfolded. Yeah, but what about right now? And how does that apply to things that are happening in my life right now? And you go, well, I can play it the way I did it then, or I can play it differently. And I think that's where all of us are. I think particularly right now, people are going through things that are kind of microcosm of what the world is going through. I don't think this is an easy moment for anyone. I think everything that's happened recently, even in our country, is making everybody think like, wow. And this is good. I think, I feel that there's a lot of activation going on, a lot of waking up and growing up that I think is actually going to benefit all of us.
Yeah. Amen. And Marianne, I just want to comment that I have seen you many, many times also choose the path of love and the path of forgiveness in the face of real, real difficulty. And you
Thank you.
you have been a student, a loyal, dedicated student of this for decades, and you practice it. And I really want to honor and just say how inspiring that is for me to see, because you step into the fire there and you show up with as much dedication to truth and love and forgiveness as possible. And I appreciate it.
And I appreciate that, Marci. Part of the issue for me is that my mistakes, my failures, as well as my successes become so public. So it gives you some motivation, like coming out of this presidential campaign. I can be very angry. I can be very bitter. I can be very, I told you so. I can be, and you did this and you did that. I mean, I could live there. And then what will happen? I will become a bitter, angry, kind of pathetic old woman. That's where you want to go, Marianne? Or do you want that divine alchemy of forgiveness and grace and atonement, really owning what was your part, really forgiving everybody else? You want to do that, because if you do that, all kinds of new beginnings. And by the way, everybody's going to see which it is. Right? So, there's some motivation there to try to get it right.
Well, I think you're doing amazingly, and it is inspiring to witness. And so back to the mystic Jesus, I want to
Okay.
understand, why did you do what's the difference between the mystic Jesus and the historic Jesus? How do you and I are both Jewish? How does that play into things for us? And why Jesus? Why not Mary? Why not Buddha? I know, I have a feeling I know what you're going to answer, but I'd love to hear your take on this.
Well, first of all, I wrote a book a few years ago called Tears to Triumph, where I do talk about Buddha and I do talk about Moses. I think, as well as Jesus, all of the great religious scriptural tales are code. All of them. So just like people say to you when you have a dream that it's every figure is an aspect of yourself, so it's also true that in the great religious stories, every figure in the dream, in the story, is an aspect of yourself. The teachings of the Course in Miracles do emanate from Jesus. But a lot of people don't want to go there, and the Course in Miracles is like, fine, don't go there. I'm not even putting my name on the cover. He says, you don't have to believe in me. You don't have to have any relationship with me. This is not about believing in Jesus, not about believing in God. It's about believing in one another. And if you practice these principles, you will have the miraculous effects. But he does say in the Course, if you do invite me into your thought system, and the Course in Miracles is not an exclusive Jesus. It's not saying you should. It's not saying you're the only one who's going to be saved. None of that. There is a Christian religion, obviously, an ecclesiastical tradition that is based on the historical figure of Jesus 2,000 years ago. This is not in any way to disparage, disrespect, or undercut that. This is, however, the Course in Miracles and my book and books like this are part of a lineage that has been with us since the earliest days of Christendom. Now, remember, in Judaism, there's the mystical path of the Kabbalah. In Islam, there's the mystical path of Sufism. The mystical journey is a universal spiritual space that lies at the heart of all the great religious expressions of the world. And the Gnostic or mystical tradition of Christendom sees your relationship with Jesus as something that exists in your heart right now, as a universal force of spiritual consciousness, as relevant to what is happening in your life right now as it was demonstrated in his life when he lived as a man 2,000 years ago. That the mystical understanding of his life story was not meant only to apply to his experiences, but to your experiences. And he lives now within you as your comforter. When you have moments of pain, moments of anxiety, moments of neurosis, moments of pathology, moments of depression, the comfort comes from someone saying, if you would like, I will help you change that thought. He says, time and space are under my control, i.e., I'm going to put Wayne Dyer in the order. It seems so little, but actually it's interesting. Pretty interesting. What were the chances, right?
Right.
So Jesus, nothing in this book is to, like you were saying, we're both Jewish. And by the way, I want to take a moment for anyone else who is Jewish watching this. Thank you, Marci, for saying we're Jewish, as opposed to this covertly anti-Semitic trope by which too many people now feel the need to say, I was raised Jewish, or so-and-so was raised Jewish, as though to indicate, but you don't have to be that now, which is very disturbing. And so thank you. We're Jews.
Yes.
You're born a Jew,
We are
you die a
Jews.
Jew. Right.
That's
Thank you.
right.
Thank you. And it is a race of people, and that's so significant at this moment. Anyway, I have never felt. Now, when I first saw the Course in Miracles, for me personally, I don't know about you, Marci. First of all, when it comes to Christianity, my mother, I never heard anything. I don't know what you were told. I was just told, no, honey, they read that book and we read this one.
That's what
A
I was
different
told.
religion. I was never taught anything. And Jews, I always say Jews don't have a problem with Jesus. Jews have a problem with the history of Christianity. Can you blame us? But Jesus himself, he was a Jew. His teachings grew from. So the only thing my mother ever told me about Jesus, I don't know where she got this. This is what my mother said. I'm under the impression he was very polite. Where did she get that? First of all, he wasn't always polite. I'm under the impression he was very polite. Okay, great, Ma. Anyway, when I first saw The Course in Miracles, I had studied comparative religion, theology, really enjoyed it. In college, St. Augustine, St. Thomas, I really dug that stuff, actually. St. Teresa. But when I saw The Course in Miracles on somebody's coffee table in New York at a cocktail party, I was like, no, this is a Christian book. I saw it again a year later, and then it's like, oh, I get it. Nobody's asking me to convert my religion. These traditional Christian terms are used in decidedly non-traditional psychotherapeutic ways. Just like you read a book about Buddhism or you read a book about Hinduism. You know, the beauty of all the search for truth is that there's one truth spoken in many different ways. You go, oh yeah, I saw that in a Buddhist book. Oh yeah, I saw that in an AA and the big book. I saw that principle. And these days, so many of these principles are also described in secular, philosophical, depending on who you are and where you best fit in.
The ones we've spoken of so far, Jesus, Buddha, Moses, are the masculine principles. And now there's a lot being spoken about the feminine principle. Many people with the Mother Mary Magdalene, and other. I'd love for you to speak about the difference and where they come together of this masculine principle and the feminine principle.
I think Jesus, although in his incarnation on the earth lived as a man, in terms of the spiritual principle, I don't think it's a masculine principle. The Christ is that which is mothered by our humanness, i.e. Mary, impregnated by God. So the Christ in you is neither male nor female. You are fathered by the yang and mothered by the yin, the total person. And that's why in this book, beginning with Mary, for the Catholics, Mary is a very, very important part. I think it's interesting that when, they have a Protestant Reformation, their idea of reforming things was getting rid of the woman. Hello. But I'm not a Catholic or a Protestant, so I don't have to enter into that conversation, but it's interesting, isn't it? Mary is the human heart awakened in her slumber. We've been in a state of slumber. The Course in Miracles says that in the Bible, it says that Adam fell asleep. And nowhere does it say that he woke up, that there has not been a massive awakening, but it's time to initiate one. Mary, all of us, awaken in the middle of the night, go up on the roof. That means go into mindfulness, go into meditation, go into prayer, go into that place above the cacophony of the world where you can hear the small, still voice for God, which is in both Christianity and in Judaism. What you hear is an angel. She goes up to the roof and an angel visits her. The Course in Miracles calls angels the thoughts of God. The angel that comes to you in those moments is called Gabriel. Gabriel says to her, you are going to give birth to a son. That's the part of us that's heard, you know what? You're going to be better. You are going to totally evolve. You're going to totally transform. You're going to become a you 2.0. And it's not going to be an easy pregnancy. And the divine masculine, i.e. Joseph, is going to protect you and navigate with the world and go out of town when it's not safe to be here, etc. And the divine feminine of Mary and the divine masculine of Jesus together are going to create a safe space. And then the intellect is going to say no room, but it won't matter because God is going to provide a manger. And the kind of people who will love you through this are going to be present for this. And you are going to give birth to a new self. And you will have a ministry and your new self will go out there. And from the beginning, Herod, the ego mind's going to be out to kill you and to destroy all this and to attack all this and to invalidate all this. And his sons, being all the other people, are going to be talking shit about you. And you're still going to have your ministry and you're going to go out there. And then the world both those forces within yourself and within others are going to try to destroy that beautiful thing you are trying to do. And they will even succeed to a certain extent. And then you'll have to go grieve in the tomb, and it's going to take at least 3 days, but symbolically 3 days. And you will be in the tomb, and you will process, and you will grieve, and you will atone, and you will forgive, and you will go through all of that. And then when they come, the feminine aspect of yourself and others comes to retrieve and to say, we want the body, the angels will say, she's not even there. And what does that mean? That Jesus wasn't even there when they said he's not there, he's risen? You won't even be the same person. Mm-hmm. You won't even, his molecular structure completely shifted to a higher place. And that's what resurrection is. You return to the right mind. The Course in Miracles says a return to sanity. And that's what's happening on the planet. We have reached a point in evolution where the collective behavioral patterns of the human race are no longer well adapted for human survival. And anytime that happens in the life of a species, either the species evolves in another direction or it goes extinct. The Secretary General of the United Nations says we are on an unsustainable path. Now, when we were kids, we were taught that a mutation in those species that evolve, a mutation occurs. Some member of the species that demonstrates another kind of behavior. And then if a critical mass of the members of the species follow that way, then the whole thing evolves in another direction. And to me, that's what Jesus is. That's what Buddha is. That's what Moses, that's what all the great religious figures, they are saying a better way. The Course in Miracles says salvation. And this is an example of a traditional term where the psychotherapeutic meaning is the only thing to be saved from is our own fear, our own belief and attachment to guilt, our attachment to attack, our addiction to defense, our addiction to the wheel of suffering. The only thing to be saved from is that. You know, Buddha was born about 500 years before Jesus. And he said, action, reaction. And then Jesus says, yes, but in a moment of grace, all that karma is burned and you can start over. So that to me is who they are. And the Course says salvation begins when you consider the possibility there might be a better way. And that's what we're all doing. When you talk about being miracle-minded, it's not just for ourselves. It's when we demonstrate a different way, a better way. We lift up the people around us. The Course in Miracles says every thought you think takes everyone around you straight to heaven or straight to hell. And those aren't conditions after we die. It means happiness or anxiety very quickly after you think the thought.
And now, clearly, to me, now are the times we were born for this. And this is being called on now. So I before we close, I'm going to have you do a prayer for us, but I would love for you to speak about what you see as being called in these times and how to move forward.
You and I are talking right before the holidays. And with Thanksgiving, we're reminded to be grateful for that which remains. And with Christmas, the metaphysical, the mystical meaning of Christmas is not just the birth of Jesus 2,000 years ago, but his birth into the world anytime we are willing to express a greater love. And how could anyone doubt the significance of such a thing right now? So I've often said, let's have mindful rather than mindless holidays. Let this be less about consumerism and the externals and all that. And let's really allow ourselves to consider what it means that our hearts can be the manger. Not in your intellect. It's not born up there, it's born here. Not born in the fancy place. It's born right here. And to open up and to say, I am willing to be the angel of my better nature. Remember, whether you're talking about Jesus or Abraham Lincoln, they were talking before Freud was born. So when Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world, there wasn't a conversation about the psyche yet. My kingdom is not of this world means it's inside your mind. And in moments, he says, conform not to the patterns of the world. May your mind be renewed. That's what's going on right now. And prayer, when you say a prayer, prayer is the medium of that miracle. Sometimes I'll say, Did you pray about something? And people will say to me, oh, yeah, I know it's in God's hands. I said, I didn't ask you if it was in God's hands. Everything God's hands. I'm asking you, did you pray for it? Because if it's still left in God's hands and we're not willing to change, it could be thousands of years before we get this. We're going to get it. We're going to learn through pain, and we're going to learn through wisdom, but we're going to get it. The issue is, particularly given the urgency of our historical circumstances, let's get it now.
Let's get it now. Let's get it now. So, Marianne, would you do a prayer for all of us?
I'd be glad to.
Wonderful.
Dear God, thank you for bringing us together in this space of listening. May all our hearts be opened and our minds be illumined. We send our love to one another. We give gratitude for all the good that is in our lives. We pray to be the people that you need us to be, to do the things you would have us do, that love might save this precious world. And so it is. Together, we all say, amen.
Amen. Marianne, thank you. Exquisite and powerful.
I love you.
And all of everybody coming together in this energy is just, it magnifies it. So thank you so much. Every time I speak to you, I hang on every word, and I feel opened up. I feel inspired, and I understand more, and my heart is I feel more love. And so I really thank you for that. And I want everybody to know that I think the Mystic Jesus is a fabulous gift for the holidays. Mystic Jesus, the mind of love. I also know that, Marianne, starting on January 1st, you will be reading the text of A Course in Miracles. I've done that with you many, many years in a row, and that's a powerful thing. So I encourage everybody to check that out. And you can also find anything else out about Marianne and her work at marianne.com. And Marianne, before we close, is there any last minute word that you want to share with us?
No, just that I think we can all support one another, knowing that where there's love, miracles occur naturally. So for those who might feel like, oh, we're in trouble in the world today, know that when enough of us share our love, the miracles we need will happen. I believe that.
Thank you. Thank you. And I will also add to that a quote. I always like to end with a quote. And this is a quote from the Mystic Jesus that says, our purpose on earth is to help heal the world. And every encounter, every effort, either large or small, can be part of that healing. So may that healing be happening and happening quickly here. So I want to thank you, Marianne, and I want to thank everyone for listening here today. I hope that you're feeling inspired and uplifted and more in the Miracle Zone after our time together. Please share this Miracle Zone love with your friends and your family. You can also go take our free 2-minute quiz to find out what your miracle superpower is. You can go to miraclezonequiz.com. And remember that your life of miracles is waiting for you. It's your birthright. And simply by being here and by listening to this and by the willingness to take a step forward into the Miracle Zone, you make a difference in your own life and in the world. So enjoy, and we send love.